What's going on, guys? Welcome to the video. We are going to take a look at Iain Duncan Smith's interview on the Sophie Ridge show earlier this morning. He destroys John Major's hypocritical court actions against Boris, of course regarding him shutting down Parliament, which as most of you will know, John Major himself did in 1997 to avoid scrutiny regarding the Cash for Questions scandal. Iain also calls out the protests yesterday that were promoted by hard left Labour activists and the Labour Party itself, the fake outrage, and rubbishes the claims no one voted for a no-deal Brexit, since Ramona MPs and media hags won't stop spouting it on every mainstream media show that will have them on. Let's check it out.
Former Conservative leader Iain Duncan Smith is here. It is very good to see you, sir. How are you?
And you, and you.
Well, look, this is a mess, isn't it? We're now in a complete and utter mess where we don't know if we're coming or going. Parliament's being prorogued. No one seems happy. What is anyone at home meant to make of this?
No shit, Weasel. We know exactly what we are doing. As Anne the Soy Boy Destroyer said,
there is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors, slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires, and that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going, and we are glad to be going. We're off.
So we'll have less of this don't know whether we are coming or going nonsense. That was decided in 2016. We are going, end of story. My guess is this Sky host loves to
Ramon! Well, actually, it is a mess. I completely agree with you. And I think the biggest problem we've had is that we've had a government that has... My government has allowed this to meander, the previous leader, Theresa May's government, for really getting on for 3 years. The British people voted to leave. And let me just take head on those ridiculous charges. They didn't vote to leave without a deal or anything else. The truth is, I was one of the prominent figures in the campaign. I can tell you categorically, it was quite clear, the Prime Minister then, David Cameron, and George Osborne, who led the Remain campaign, said categorically, when you leave, you won't be in the single market, the customs union, you'll have to be out, completely out. So the whole point about this is really that people voted to leave. You can't read into their heads what they voted for. And Boris Johnson now is a breath of fresh air, frankly. He's come in and said, look, we have one purpose in life, which is to deliver what people voted for, which is to leave, get on with it, get the job done, and then have... we hope, a good relationship with the European Union, but if we don't tell them and believe that we will leave without a deal if necessary, as, by the way, Article 50 explicitly says, you leave on the set date, doesn't say anything about having a deal, and that's the end of it.
Well, Iain wastes no time calling out the incompetent Maybot government before absolutely shitting on the nonsense claims no one voted to leave without a deal, or that a WTO Brexit was never discussed during the Leave campaign. We all know that's wrong because we have the evidence to back it up, of course.
And what was not debated in 2016 was the likelihood that we would end up leaving the EU with no deal.
And at the end of that 2 years, there is no guarantee that agreement will have been reached, but our exit would be automatic.
The electorate will have spoken. We will have to invoke Article 50. Once you invoke Article 50, it is a one-way street to the exit, which will happen in 2 years with no agreement of any kind at all, if necessary. And what was not debated in 2016 was the likelihood that we would end up leaving the EU with no deal.
It's about time members of the government started their interviews with that fact, since the average viewer likely won't remember anything that was discussed during the referendum campaign, aside from perhaps the Boris bus that sends Ramonas into shit fits for some reason. Iain thinks, like many people do, Boris Johnson is a breath of fresh air because he wants to deliver what people voted for and just get on with it. Which I agree with, though it still remains to be seen what sort of Brexit Boris will settle for. Because like I've said before, anything is possible with politicians. Hopefully he takes us out on no deal and leaves the EU kicking and screaming as it withers and dies. Iain is spot on when he points out Article 50 states we leave the EU on the set date. It says nothing about a deal because of course there is already a deal in place. It's called World Trade Organization. You know, the way 170 other countries trade with each other, the EU and us. That is a deal that we're already signed up to. We could do a free trade deal with the EU if they wanted to, but that would be it. We don't want any of their laws, any of their politics. We're good on our own. We'll trade with them. That's it.
If you're going to be nice and frank with us this morning, let's talk this prorogation. Ben Wallace was right, wasn't he, when he was caught off mic? This isn't actually about setting a domestic agenda, is it? It's about trying to stop Parliament blocking no deal.
No, I listened to what Ben Wallace said. I thought what he was saying is there are lots of other issues around, but I don't think I have any particular problem with it. Let's just deal with this prorogation issue. First of all, there's a lot of crocodile tears and totally faux shock and horror about this. The reality is for John Major, just out of interest, who wants to go to court, I don't recall he went to court when he prorogued the House to stop there being any cash for questions issues. You know, politicians are very good at forgetting what they used to do and remembering only what they want to. So the reality is, prorogation is not some ancient idea. It happens all the time. It normally happens every single year. We've had the longest Parliament ever for 400 years. We should have had a Queen's speech well over 2 years ago, but we didn't, and we haven't had one a year ago. We need one now. Boris Johnson's just been elected leader. He's right. And there's always been a conference season. I don't recall Labour getting up, by the way, in the summer and saying, we're going to cancel our conference. We want to be in the House. They didn't say that because they want their conference. And the Liberal Democrats didn't say we're going to cancel our conference. So they were all happy to go to the conference, which they normally would do. This amounts to 6 parliamentary working days in which we are prorogued. Let's get this in perspective. And all those people marching yesterday have either completely got it wrong because somebody told them something which is untrue, or most of them, as I believe, were actually engineered by the hard left of Labour. Because look at the placards. They were sort of, get rid of Boris, hang Boris. There's some really foul commentary going on social media as well. So this is very engineered by the hard left, which John McDonnell you saw earlier, despite the casual-looking nature of his interview, is, however, deeply sinister and part of that ghastly momentum crowd who just threaten everybody.
Well, Iain calls out the crocodile tears from the likes of Owen Smollett, Commissar Corbynov and the rest of the Ramonin traitors we have seen in the last few days screaming from the rooftops about this undemocratic Prime Minister who has used the democratic power to hold a Queen's speech that is long overdue. Before absolutely destroying John Major's hypocrisy, because like I have said multiple times before, he prorogued Parliament from 17th of March 1997 to the 1st of May 1997 when he lost the general election to avoid being grilled over the cash for questions scandal. So essentially corruption, as I said in a video yesterday, which last I checked was actually a crime. Proroguing Parliament to hold a Queen's speech is the democratic thing to do. At least Boris is not doing it to avoid being called out for corruption. I mean, let's be honest, in my opinion, the democratic thing Boris should have done is prorogued Parliament for a general election in the first week of November. Get Brexit done, and then he can get the traitors out of the Conservative Party. Voters can then remove any other undemocratic EU collaborators from office by not voting for them. Now, as Iain said, this has been the longest parliamentary session in 400 years, so a Queen's speech is overdue, and therefore so is a prorogation. Ramonas need to pipe down and drown their sorrows in soy lattes because we don't give a shit. Iain does point out something everyone has overlooked though, including myself. None of the Remain parties who are so against shutting down Parliament cancelled their party conferences. Guess they don't want to stop Brexit if it interferes with their vanity shows. Iain then talks about the protests, and I would have to agree with him. The people marching are doing so because they watch the mainstream media and buy into their propaganda like good little sheeple. Either that, or they're Twitter activists like Owen the Soy Boy Smollett and his merry band of losers. When I see them, it amazed me how many of these people had the same plaques. That makes it look like paid protests if you ask me. I wonder who sponsored it. I would bet they run or have interest in a printing company because they would have made a killing yesterday.
There is an argument that says, if you stop a no deal, it stops a good negotiation. You've made that argument to me, yeah, I think. Yeah. Would you actually want a deal? Would you really want a deal? I mean, I know you backed the Brady Amendment when that was up, but you have changed your position somewhat since then, haven't you?
No, what happened was very simply, I don't like the withdrawal agreement. I think it's a bad deal. I think we started to negotiate on bended knee. And I think by the end of it, we ended up on all fours. And I have to tell you, that's no way to run a negotiation. Why? Because we gave the EU everything they wanted, literally back in December 2017. I went to see the Prime Minister directly and say, don't sign this agreement. You've given them their money, you've given them their continuing period of another 2 to 3 years locked under their rules, and also the likelihood we might end up in the customs union, plus all the other bits about defence. So I said, don't sign this. I was against the withdrawal agreement. The only reason I finally voted for it at the end was that I feared what was going to happen next, and it has happened. An uproar from the public over the fact we didn't leave on March the 29th, and now all this chaos. So the answer is, get on and do it. And the reality for us is this withdrawal agreement doesn't fly. Boris has said that. Everybody agrees it. It has to have fundamental changes. He's already proposed that. The EU has to step up to the plate. Now, here's a very interesting point. Right now, they're not blinking. Why are they not blinking? Because they hope that what they would privately think are the dupes in Parliament who are going to take away the no-deal option from Boris if they can. That then means they don't have to move at all, because they know Boris then faces the choice of not being able to leave but having to extend. So the Prime Minister needs to face this down, because if they want to withdraw this, they're going to take away one of his most critical tools, which is to go without a deal, and the EU knows this would be enormously damaging, and they're in recession, many of those countries.
So Iain Duncan Smith explains to this idiotic host why no deal has to be on the table. He points out we started negotiations with a bended knee and ended up on all fours. But that was not the UK, Iain. That was Theresa the EU appeaser, who went over there, dropped to her knees and got teabagged by
Herr Juncker in the bunker.
The country must never forget, she went over there and took what they gave her because it gave us the illusion of Brexit without actually leaving. She is a Remainer, remember. She never intended to get us out of the EU. She is just another one of their puppets. So that deal suited her because she hoped it would make Brexiteers think we had left the EU, but still keeping us in the EU. Even when MPs like Iain went to Maybot and told her not to sign the deal because everything contained within it was bad for this country and it was not Brexit. But she didn't listen, of course, because it's Maybot, and like we've all said, she wanted to remain. Now, Iain Duncan Smith did admit that he voted for it once because he expected this shit show to occur and knew the public would be in uproar after the March deadline was missed. I can accept that, Iain, but you still should not have voted it. The country would have been in more uproar if you would have voted that through and it would have passed. Luckily, you have seen the light now and hopefully would never vote for any other deal that even remotely resembles that one. Iain finished up pointing out that the EU are not blinking and won't because they hope the Ramoning collaborators in Parliament will remove the no-deal option from Boris Johnson's armoury, which is kind of obvious. Let's hope they can't do that, though, because it will create an issue.
But a lot of your colleagues who are seen as very ardent Brexiteers, we know if the backstop was to go, they'd vote for what was left in the withdrawal agreement. You're saying that's not good enough?
No, I wrote a piece about this to say Boris Johnson understands fully well what some of the issues are around the withdrawal agreement, not just the backstop, but issues around legal control during the course of the implementation period, issues around defence. These are all part of those discussions and negotiations. I'm one of those that says I want Boris Johnson to have a free hand in this, to get on with it. I trust him to know what the problems are, and I trust him to do his level best to get a reasonable deal from the EU. But I believe the EU will step up to the plate once they know the alternative to that is Britain leaves without a deal. It's really interesting. A man called Herr Otto Winkel, I think it is, who's a German MEP, said to the Commission, it's your fault. Do you know when Britain leaves, it's like 19 or 20 of the smaller countries, only 27 in total, leaving at the same time. It will be cataclysmic for the European Union. They know that. They're sitting on a deal that gave them everything. They're not going to suddenly say, I tell you what, let's give you back this stuff. But they will once they realise there's no other way but leaving without a deal.
The Sky host makes ridiculous claims that ardent Brexiteers would vote for the withdrawal agreement if it had the backstop removed. My guess is that's based on what the government has been saying, singling out the backstop as a reason why the Brexit deal can't be agreed. But personally, I think that is just misdirection by either Dominic Cummings or Boris Johnson. There may be some who would vote for it who maybe didn't vote for it before, but the majority of the ones who would vote for it would just be Remainers. I would guess Boris Johnson or Dominic Cummings' plan is to make the EU and Parliament the enemy of the people as a fallback measure should the Remainers manage to block a no-deal Brexit on October the 31st. Boris can call an election with a WTO clean break Brexit as the Tory party's manifesto pledge. This would be vital for them to form an alliance with Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party. which would absolutely romp the Remoaners at the ballot box, as we all know. Iain finished up that clip quoting an EU MEP who claims when Britain leaves the EU, it will be like 19 or 20 smaller nations leaving at the same time, which I would probably agree with. Iain knows, like I have said before, the EU will not survive if we leave without a deal. They need a very one-sided deal just to keep their heads above water. Let's hope we can get out with no deal, so we can also help the other 27 EU nations escape this undemocratic shit pit known as the European Union. Then we can make individual trade deals with each of them that benefits both British citizens and their citizens, not ones that benefit unelected tosspots.
And in terms of the work that needs to be put in, I mean, Simon Coveney, the Deputy Prime Minister in Ireland, was saying, well, look, part of the problem with this, the whole backstop, which just seems to be a key element of this, obviously, is that no serious alternative has been put forward. The government
simply untrue.
Why
I went to Monsieur Barnier twice, with Owen Paterson and with a team of experts, including customs people. And we, back in October, pointed this out when the deal hadn't been fully agreed to. And they said to us at the time, and in email exchanges, this is probably where we're going to end up. These are all the alternative arrangements. We drafted all this stuff, okay? So they heard about this back in October. We offered to work on it immediately, but then the government caved in and signed this terrible agreement. We went back to see them again in April to say, you know, you could still change this deal and get it through. And the attitude was different because they've got their deal. So Mr. Coveney and the others are talking nonsense. The reality is that there are other arrangements. I've got another paper which is about to be given to the government that shows there are ways to secure our legal position.
Look, Iain Duncan Smith, appreciate your forthright views this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
OK, so when all else fails, Sky News quote the Deputy Prime Minister of Ireland about there not being an alternative to the backstop. Like that will give the Remainer argument any credibility. The Irish government has to toe the line of the EU. Iain instantly calls that bullshit out since he knows there are other options as a matter of fact. Because almost a year ago now, before the surrender document was even agreed by Maybot, him and a group of experts had already done the legwork, proving there are other options. Maybot, of course, ruined that idea by agreeing to the EU's terms. The EU have what they want, why would they change it now? Iain finished up that interview with a comment that he does not elaborate on, but is very interesting. He has plans about to be presented to the government that will secure their legal position. Legal position over what is the question though? Is it the legal position regarding prorogation, the backstop, or is it the legal position ensuring a no-deal Brexit? I am hoping it's the latter. I'm not sure whether the host heard it or is just not bright enough to have noticed what he actually said there, because he ignores it completely and ends the interview. The last comment has really got my mind wondering though, and hopes are higher. Well, once again, Iain Duncan Smith did well in his defence of Brexit and real democracy, shutting down the nonsense spouted by countless Remoaners who just love to Remoan! Because they can't take it, they lost. I'm hopeful his paper that tells the government how to secure their legal position is regarding a no-deal Brexit, so we can celebrate our freedom from the undemocratic EU superstate. Hopefully other European nations will follow in our footsteps and take pride in their nationality once more. The EU recession is coming. If Britain leaves on WTO terms, we might see more EU nations break free. Hopefully we do. I'm going to end the video there, guys. I want to thank the channel's PayPal, Patreon and Subscribe members who are all linked in the video description for their continued support of the channel this month, along with everyone who watches my videos. Remember to leave a like, subscribe with the notification bell and share this video as it helps the channel a lot, and I will see you all in the next one.